large tornado. Oh, it's huge.
A small town is dead ahead.
So your time is up. You need to be in your shelter.
When 205-mile-per-hour winds hit, nothing stands a chance.
You just look at the destruction, you think, how could anybody survive this?
95% of our buildings are destroyed. Our folks are homeless.
But the town will not concede defeat.
We're going to have the greenest downtown in America. We're going to have the greenest community in America.
The town stakes its future on the very element that tore it to the ground. On this episode of When Weather Changed History, a town wiped off the map by an EF5 tornado rebuilds from scratch, and in the process, redefines the green movement in America. Friday, May 4th, 2007. It's spring in Kansas, and that means thunderstorms.
Several days in advance, we had put out some statements just highlighting the threat that we could be in a situation where we'd have thunderstorms.
The sound of blaring storm sirens is not uncommon.
We've all been through it. The whistle is blown, and we all just kind of stand outside our doors and look at the clouds and go, oh, it isn't going to do anything.
There was no indication that day, that May 4th, was going to be anything remarkable or history-making.
Greensburg, Kansas is 110 miles west of Wichita. One of its main attractions is the world's largest hand-dug well. But Greensburg has very little industry and few job opportunities. Residents say it's a great place to raise kids, but when they head off to college, they often don't come back. The population has dwindled to 1,400 from almost 2,000 in the 1960s.
In the past, probably 40 years in rural America, our biggest export from our communities has been our youth.
Bob Dixon's children are grown and gone. On May 4th, he enjoys his new status as a retiree.
So I was weeding flower beds and mowing lawn and just puttering along.
At the National Weather Service in Dodge City, Kansas, meteorologists closely monitor changing weather conditions.
Out here in the high plains, the atmosphere kind of mixes. At the surface, we'll have a zone of moist air to the east and very dry and sometimes very hot air to the west. Basically, that's a dry line.
Mixing of moist and dry air along the dry line can trigger storms.
In the late afternoon and early evening hours, we were starting to see a lot of development along the dry line in southwest Kansas on down into the western part of Oklahoma.
8 p.m. Storm spotters see an ominous supercell over southwestern Kansas.
Just one storm in particular, it really started to gain strength shortly after 8 o'clock or so.
Bill Odell is a Kiowa County Sheriff's deputy.
I'm going to be going down 183.
And was on patrol the night of May 4th when he got word of the approaching storm.
I got to thinking, you know, I'm going to go down south and kind of watch this from the backside.
Storm spotters like Bill Odell are the first line of defense for the town and will alert authorities of dangerous cloud formations. John Kalklaser is also a storm spotter and a volunteer firefighter.
Most of the guys that are spotters are members of the Kiowa County Fire Department, and I've been on the fire department for 30 years.
John is teaching his son, J.D., how to read clouds.
I was sitting there playing my Game Boy, and he's like, oh, let's go storm spotting.
As the sun sets, the Kalklasers head to the outskirts of town to look for storm clouds. Sheriff's Deputy Bill Odell sets up watch about 20 miles south.
As I was watching the clouds, I seen a split in the clouds. You can see the updrafts and stuff starting to suck the clouds away.
Thunderstorms split when internal winds rotate in opposite directions.
One of the splits will turn to the left, one will go to the right. Now, the one that went to the left raced very, very quickly to the north. Never did produce a tornado, but the one that eventually produced Greensburg slowed down, and it really started to rotate. And that's when we really started thinking, hey, something is going on here.
9:20 p.m. Lightning strobes the sky. The flashes illuminate a large tornado heading toward Greensburg. Storm spotters are amazed at its size.
Large tornado. Oh, it's huge.
The tornado is wedge-shaped, not funnel-shaped. That means it has a larger base of circulation on the ground.
At that point, your stomach starts to hurt a little bit. And I would say that's when we really started to have the sense that this was going to be something not good.
Weather instruments verify an enormous storm.
Now, on Doppler radar, extreme winds were indicated. And not only the speeds, but just the overall width of this thing. Very, very large signature on radar.
TV stations in Wichita begin continuous live coverage.
This is a large, dangerous tornado confirmed on the ground near Greensburg, moving directly toward the town.
9:25, sirens wail in Greensburg. Heavy rains begin to fall. News stations track the tornado live as it travels north along Highway 183.
Every time the NEXRAD Doppler radar would come in, that track just kept Greensburg, right in the cone.
At its current speed, the tornado will reach South Greensburg in 20 minutes. 9:41, the National Weather Service in Dodge City issues a tornado emergency. Tornado emergencies are rarely issued.
It was like 100% guaranteed that this tornado would hit Greensburg. Once we knew that, it's going to hit town, it's going to be bad, it's going to be devastating, that's when we put out the tornado emergency.
From the National Weather Service, a tornado emergency now in effect for Greensburg in Kiowa County.
We're standing outside, just watching it. Knew the wind came up and hail, oh my gosh, hail.
Laura Stoltenberg hurries her husband and 2 children to a neighbor's basement. On the way, she calls her mother on the other side of town and tells her to go to a nearby storm shelter.
I said, you need to get to the senior center. And she said, I have a perfectly good room in the middle of my house.
The tornado bears down on Greensburg. John and J.D. Kalklaser can't see the tornado coming because it's wrapped in rain clouds.
It started to hail, big ol' hail, and we decided that it was time to go because it was getting pretty bad.
The Kalklasers drive through the rain and hail, heading to John's house. At the last moment, they go to the home of John's ex-wife to get JD's puppy. His ex-wife is out of town, and the dog is there alone. JD grabs the dog.
We gotta get downstairs now.
I looked at my dad and he goes, buddy, it's gonna hit us. And I'm just staring at him. I'm like, no, it can't hit us. And he goes, it's gonna hit us. We have to go downstairs now.
Boy, I sure hate to tell you this, friends, but it looks like that thing is right on top of Greensburg. So your time is up.
9:45 p.m., 20 minutes after tornado sirens sound, the tornado slams into the south side of Greensburg. The tornado is more than 1.5 miles wide and shreds everything in its path.
At that moment, Greensburg, Kansas is disappearing and people are dying.
Even with advanced warning, no one is prepared for a tornado of such savage strength and what it will mean for the future of Greensburg. May 4th, 2007, 9:50 p.m. A powerful tornado is tearing through the small town of Greensburg, Kansas. It's a storm that will transform Greensburg in ways no one expected. The tornado is 1.7 miles wide. The town, with its 1,400 residents, is just 1.5 square miles.
Right as it was coming into town, I was praying that at the last moment that it would turn right and go east of town. And in fact, it jogged a little bit to the left and went through the heart of the city.
Winds explode in excess of 200 miles per hour. Residents crouch in basements and storm shelters as they hear their houses get sucked into the vortex.
The windows just exploded from the tremendous vacuum of the storm.
All of a sudden, the roar came and it just lifted our house away. That roar, that constant roar sound, it was just unbelievable.
The size of the tornado prolongs the town's terror.
The vortex of it took as long as maybe 2 to 2.5 minutes to move over the top. So it just stood over town and just churned.
John Kalklaser, his son and dog, are in the center of the basement at his ex-wife's house. Intense winds have already knocked out power.
Our ears started popping real bad, and then things started hitting. There's a lot of noise. A lot of noise.
And all of a sudden, the back door just broke, and my dad tackled me. And then he stood up and he ran across the room and he started yelling. And I ran over there and we got underneath the couch.
Sheriff's Deputy Bill Odell speeds back into town when he sees the tornado enter Greensburg. His 3 children are there with his ex-wife.
Made me think, okay, I need to get to my kids. Where are they at?
As Bill races into town, residents of the south side of Greensburg hear a lull in the wind. They mistakenly think the tornado has passed.
I went upstairs, told JD to stay put, and things started flying around again, so I beat it down the stairs.
We heard the wind come up, and I said, it's coming back through again. And sure enough, it came back through again.
People huddle together as the twister continues its onslaught.
Very possibly, this tornado was just so large that what they first experienced was the north side of the tornado. As the tornado passed overhead, then they got the backside, where you have a really strong west wind.
10:05 p.m. The tornado moves out of Greensburg. It makes a counterclockwise loop to the northwest and then finally dissipates. But the supercell that spawned the Greensburg tornado is relentless. It continues to spin off new twisters.
And it turned out that a second monster tornado was firing up. The first one kind of wrapped up, and then the second one was firing up. There were 4 monster tornadoes that night.
These 4 tornadoes and other smaller twisters developed to the north and east of Greensburg. They rage through the countryside for several hours. But Greensburg is spared a second attack. After the tornado passes, stunned residents emerge from their shelters.
There's nothing. No lights, no houses, couldn't see trees. The only thing you could see was from the lightning strikes. And it just looked like a war zone.
The trees I've known my entire life, you can recognize them. They were all twisted, there was bark off of them.
Rescue crews arrive in Greensburg moments after the tornado departs. A firefighter pulls Janice and John Haney from the rubble of their home.
I put my foot on his knee then, and he actually heaved us out of the basement then.
The Haneys go to an emergency command and triage center in the parking lot of Dillon's grocery store. They're afraid many of their friends and neighbors are dead.
I'm thinking probably hundreds, because I thought, oh, surely by now more people would have been, walking towards Dillon's like they told us to do. And when there wasn't, I'm going, wow, this is really, really scary, really scary.
Laura Stoltenberg's husband and children are safe. She heads to the other side of town to look for her mother. A neighbor tells her rescue crews found her mother in the wreckage of her 1-story house.
No, she told me she was hurt pretty bad. She said she was bleeding a lot. Her leg was cut really good. And, that's about all she knew.
Laura cannot get any more information on her mother's condition or whereabouts. There is limited phone service, and it is difficult for rescue workers to relay information on who is injured or dead.
My neighbor across the street, he's the fire chief. When he came to town, he ordered 300 body bags, and I thought he was completely in line if he had enough of them.
Bill Odell fears the worst when he gets back to town and sees the devastation.
When I seen that, I immediately went into shock. That's when I started thinking, okay, where are my kids?
Bill makes his way to the apartment complex where his children stay with their mom. Like the other buildings in Greensburg, it's flattened.
I was yelling, screaming, throwing things, lifting beds, couches, everywhere. Then I realized they weren't there.
His last hope is that his ex-wife took the children to the storm shelter at the town's hospital where she works.
So I had to walk a good block to the hospital. Then I realized that the east side of the hospital had been devastated.
But the hospital storm shelter is intact, and that's where Bill finds his 3 children, scared but unharmed.
And once you find who you're looking for, then it's kind of, thank God, okay, it's time to go work. Let's help others.
Bill joins the small army of emergency workers and volunteers mobilizing around Greensburg. Survivors are evacuated as quickly as possible. They board buses and head to a school gymnasium in the next town. As the first buses depart, emergency personnel estimate that hundreds of people may still be buried in the debris. And the severe weather isn't finished with Greensburg yet. Greensburg will have to brave more dangerous weather as people try to come to grips with the obliteration of their town.
It really started to weigh on your heart what has just happened here. And we have just absolutely gone through the biggest disaster that any community could ever have.
May 5th, 2007. The sun brings to light the incomprehensible scope of destruction in Greensburg, Kansas. It is a nightmarish landscape. The town is leveled. Houses are splintered. The contents are scattered throughout the community and countryside. City officials estimate only 5% of the town's buildings are not damaged.
It looked like a bomb had gone off right in the middle of town. So it was very, very tough to deal with.
At daybreak, emergency personnel fan out to search for victims. It is not until mid-morning that Laura Stoltenberg learns the fate of her mother. Her mother chose to ride out the storm in her first-floor bathroom rather than go to a storm shelter.
I guess some neighbors had stopped by to try to get her, and she was already in her nightgown and she didn't want to go.
The tornado decimated her mother's home. Laura finds her at a makeshift morgue just outside of town.
It's one of those visions that it takes a while to get out of your head. It just didn't look like her. But I knew it was. I seen her watch.
The weather on May 5th and 6th adds to the stress of survivors and rescue workers. The storm system that produced the Greensburg tornado the night before is still active and dangerous. Once again, tornado sirens sound.
In this case now, the rescue and recovery and search teams who were in Greensburg looking for victims, we're telling them to go to shelter. What shelter?
For 2 days following the Greensburg tornado, supercells generate 111 tornadoes across the central U.S. These twisters miss Greensburg and other towns, but the heavy rains add to the misery of survivors and slow the recovery process. Monday, May 7th, The storm system finally weakens and moves east. Residents are allowed back to sort through the wreckage of their homes. While grief-stricken by what they have lost,
hometown's what I remember is gone.
they are thankful they survived.
I mean, it's people, not things. I just appreciate everyone and everything so much more.
Some are certain Greensburg will never recover.
I believe that this town will never regrow.
But city officials try to be optimistic.
We couldn't show or tell the people of our community that, uh-oh, this is too big, this is too massive, we just need to leave. No, no, no. We had to come back. We had to be very positive, strong.
The task of rebuilding will be enormous. But amid the devastation, some see an opportunity. One that will transform the town in a way never seen before.
When the canvas became blank again, you could paint that community any way you wanted it.
The paint color of choice is green. May 7th, 2007. 3 days after one of the most powerful tornadoes in recent history, Greensburg residents are trying to salvage what they can from their homes.
I just stood there and just bawled, I think, for 15 minutes because I was still in honest-to-God shock.
961 houses and business buildings are destroyed. Another 216 sustained major damage.
I want to kind of give you an idea of just visually what this town of Greensburg, Kansas looks like.
Every landmark in town is gone. People born and raised here can't find their way home.
There was so much destruction, unless you had a GPS with you, you had no idea what street you were on.
The thing I noticed the most, no trees. All the branches were gone and the bark ripped off of them. That was, I think, what really got to me the most was the trees.
This is all that's left of John Kalklazer's house. The decision to retrieve his son's puppy from his ex-wife's home may have saved their lives. John's house didn't have a basement.
There was only 2 walls standing, and with this much debris flying around, I don't know that we'd made it.
The storm leaves a bizarre trail of damage.
It's the little things you remember. It's the straw driven into trees, a house completely destroyed, and things sitting on a kitchen table that haven't been touched. It's just, there's no sense to it.
Janice and John Haney weren't even bruised when their home was pulverized.
I just could not believe that it was that bad. And when I looked to see where we walked out of that basement, that was miraculous that we even got out of there.
Many are amazed they survived.
Oh, that's one of Ann and I where we were during the tornado, surrounded by the 2 chest of drawers and the chair there. And that's where we rode out the storm.
First responders had feared a death toll in the hundreds. The final count is 11.
The reality is it could have been, and in another era, it would have been much worse. In fact, the only historical parallel is Udall, Kansas in 1955. Extremely similar situation, but 1955 era technology and understanding, virtually no warning, whole town wiped out, a much smaller town, and somewhere around 80 people died.
Meteorologists rate the Greensburg tornado on the Enhanced Fujita, or EF scale, which was implemented in early 2007. The enhanced scale examines damage in more detail. The highest rating, an EF5, means frame buildings are disintegrated and blown away. Bark is stripped off trees, and cars become airborne. Greensburg is given the highest rating, an EF5. It is the first time that rating has ever been assigned.
It's pretty easy to look at that and say that, yes, this is EF5 damage. Where's the trees? They're all gone. And then the vehicles, you like, where did this truck come from? Well, as I found out later, some of those vehicles were perhaps a mile away.
The town's John Deere dealership is in shambles. Combines and tractors are twisted and crushed.
It was right before our wheat harvest, and all of the combine lot was completely full of combines. Every one of those machines was totaled.
The shops that once lined Main Street are severely damaged or ruined and are barely recognizable. So is the town's Twilight movie theater. The water tower is tangled up with wreckage from the Big Well tourist attraction.
95% of our buildings are destroyed. Our folks are homeless. As far as our utilities and our infrastructure, we just lost everything. The city has absolutely zero resources left.
Rebuilding Greensburg will be a daunting prospect.
One of the hardest realities for the Aries, figuring out the next step.
And they're questioning right now exactly how they're going to rebuild with this much damage.
Some people wonder if they should even try to rebuild the town. Greensburg was already in sharp decline.
It was a town of 2,000 when I was in school, and now it was down to 1,400, and the town was dying.
Mayor Lonnie McCullum finds a silver lining in the storm clouds that destroyed his town. He is an environmentalist and wants to take an eco-friendly approach to rebuilding Greensburg.
Save all the quaintness of the small town we had before and have the new energy-efficient homes.
The green seed is planted and takes root as town leaders plan the future of a new, improved Greensburg.
We were searching for that one economic development base that could put us on the map. We wanted to be a strong, viable community in the future.
The response among residents is mixed. Longtime resident Bob Dixon likes the plan immediately.
We in rural America are the original green people. We knew that if you took care of the land, it took care of you. So when we're totally wiped out and we have nothing left, what better time to build back as sustainable and renewable as we can?
Mary Sweet is J.D. Colclaser's mom. Initially, she thinks the Green Initiative seems like a publicity stunt.
When they first started proposing green, I really thought it was a gimmick, to be perfectly honest with you.
The city needs time to plan, and it needs temporary housing before residents move away or hastily rebuild. 2 weeks after the May 4th tornado, the Federal Emergency Management Agency brings in the first of more than 200 trailers to house residents.
Oh, it was an awful experience because every time that wind would come up and it'd rock that trailer, that sound, it reminded us of the tornado.
But living side by side in so-called FEMAville helps rebuild a sense of community. Despite his initial enthusiasm, Mayor McCullum is overwhelmed by the responsibility of rebuilding the town. He resigns 3 weeks after the tornado. City Council President John Jansen is appointed mayor. He embraces the Green Initiative.
It's not red state, blue state, it's not liberal, it's not conservative, it's economic. It's truly a green issue, but it's an economic issue. And so that's the key to the ball game right there. You sell it on dollars and cents, and it's not hard to sell.
We cannot compete with our cities east and west of us. They're much larger. Traditional industry we cannot attract. By going to green, by being a sustainable community, we're looking for green collar jobs. We're looking for something that sets us away from everybody else.
In June, a nonprofit organization called Greensburg Greentown is established to educate residents on building green. Daniel Wallach tells people it's easy to do. It just takes some planning.
It has a lot to do with insulation, where you set your house and how your windows are oriented to the sun for both summer cooling and winter warming. So a lot of it is just common sense that we've lost in the age of cheap energy.
The Greensburg story remains a popular news item. Plans to become an eco-town draw the attention of actor and environmentalist Leonardo DiCaprio. He begins production of a television series called Greensburg. In addition to financial contributions, DiCaprio and network producers bring in resources to jumpstart the rebuilding process.
At one point, they brought 13 people in, planners and consultants and architects and what have you, and said, you know, here's some of the leading people in the United States that are available.
Greensburg is in the spotlight and under pressure as plans move forward. But there is a major problem: money.
The biggest concern about green building generally is expense.
Townspeople will have to decide if the benefit of going green is worth the expense and the effort. People in Greensburg, Kansas have suffered through a devastating EF5 tornado that destroyed their town in May 2007. As recovery gets underway, Greensburg leaders are excited about building a community that is a model of energy efficiency and natural resource management.
Funding is in place for the Memorial Walk.
In October, the town hires an architectural firm from Kansas City, Missouri, to develop a master plan for Greensburg's public facilities and infrastructure. Town leaders want to move quickly.
Right. Typically, we do a plan in about a year, and we did this one in 3 months.
The excitement of a brand new town is tempered by sticker shock.
FEMA steps in right away, and they help you build 75% of what you had before the storm. Well, you obviously want to create a better community, so anything improved, you've got to go look for other funding sources.
Residents also learn the insurance on their old homes won't cover the costs of new home construction.
They had a house that was appraised at $60,000, $70,000, and it's going to cost them $150,000 to rebuild.
And that's just the basic cost of rebuilding. Adding energy-efficient green features costs even more, at least up front. But green proponents say putting more money into energy-efficient features pays big dividends when it comes to lower utility bills.
If you can have a utility bill that's 25 to 50% less, most people are pretty motivated by that. The truth of the matter is it's much cheaper now to build green than it is not to build green.
The more people learn about long-term savings, the more eager they are to build energy-efficient houses.
It got to be the discussion at the coffee shop was, well, my utility bill is going to be $45 a month. Well, mine's going to be $30 a month, you know, and it was neat.
In some cases, it is the young people who educate their parents about the value of conserving energy and resources.
Even my mom has shifted a lot. She was real skeptical about solar, and now she's heard different people talking about it, and she's really interested in it.
The town explores renewable energy sources to power the entire city.
They had to consider new information, large pattern science, global climate change.
Wind is a cheaper alternative to fossil fuels. Overall, Kansas has the third highest potential for wind energy in the country.
This is a video that we showed to the community at a large public meeting.
Architects make a video presentation of the proposed plan. The city administrator is sold on wind energy.
We think it's a smart decision long-term for rates, as well as not using fossil fuels or coal or any of those things that might be harmful to the environment.
Greensburg chooses to turn the tables on the same force of nature that left the town for dead.
It's incredible to think about the wind destroying the town, and now they're going to be using the wind to rebuild the town in many ways.
While wind is abundant in Greensburg, water is not. So the street plan for Greensburg calls for sloping curbs that will help funnel rainwater into cisterns.
That'll be integrated into the streetscape, and so excess water will be stored underground and then attached to a high-efficiency irrigation system.
Architects and city leaders also discuss constructing city buildings that are so-called LEED certified. LEED is short for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a rating system developed by the nonprofit U.S. Green Building Council. Platinum is the highest rating a building can receive, 7 months after the tornado, the Greensburg City Council makes history. It becomes the first U.S. city to pass a resolution saying all city buildings shall be designed to conform to the Platinum rating.
I think what we realized early on is that to truly be a green community and sustainable community, we had to just not just talk about it, but live it.
The first city-owned building breaks ground in the spring of 2008. It is called the Business Incubator and will provide workspace for new and displaced business owners.
Frito-Lay came in on that and pumped $1 million into it, which will make it now the Frito-Lay Sonship Incubator building, but who cares?
We're using geothermal, solar, and the southern exposure.
The incubator building is constructed with insulated concrete forms called ICFs.
They're a stackable product, and the black pieces are crutches that hold the block together.
The ICFs look flimsy, but once filled with concrete, they'll hold up against the notorious weather in Kansas.
Depending upon what the engineer, how far he takes it, you can get up to a 200 to 250 mile an hour wind load on it.
Mike and Kelly Estes start rebuilding their John Deere dealership. Like the city, they too aim for LEED Platinum status.
We can sell it. We can sell something we believe in. And we believe in green, we believe in LEED.
Wind turbines will supply nearly half the electric power to the dealership. Waste oil from tractors will be burned to help heat the facility. Recycled materials are used in construction. Home and business owners in Greensburg are not mandated to build green. It's voluntary.
I'd say an easy 50% of the town is on board at the residential level.
Still, some feel pressured by city leaders. Others are upset with zoning changes or think there's too much hype surrounding Greensburg's green movement.
I've got no problem with building energy efficient and using resources wisely. I get a little tired of hearing the word green.
Janice Haney is hurt and angry when the city tells her she can't rebuild on her original lot because the new plan calls for it to be open space.
You lost where you lived, you lost your belongings, and then they kick you in the teeth one more time and say, well, no, you can't do that.
Residents show their frustration in the voting booth. John Jansen loses the mayoral election in the spring of 2008.
I got spanked. I mean, I got beat 191 to 49 in the election.
Bob Dixon is elected to lead Greensburg along its history-making course. The plans for rebuilding the town aren't just about building green. For residents to feel good about living in Greensburg again, they must also build safe.
Building into the homes modern storm shelters, which is another great thing that will come out of this.
A year after the historic EF5 tornado, the town's new safety measures will be put to the test. May 2008. 1 year after a tornado with 205-mile-per-hour winds destroyed Greensburg, Kansas. Houses are rebuilt to be eco-friendly and tornado-ready. Some families, like the Stoltenbergs, build outdoor shelters. Still haunted by the tornado, 11-year-old J.D. Colclaser insisted his mother build a storm shelter inside their new home.
We built it underneath our cement porch, so we have cement ceilings, cement walls. We've got a door that opens in so you don't get trapped in the storm shelter.
On May 23rd, a little more than a year after the Greensburg tornado, the storm shelters were put to use. 8 tornadoes were reported in Kiowa County that day. 3 came within 5 miles of Greensburg.
The chance of another 1 3/4 wide tornado coming through here are almost astronomical. But yet we still had that type of tornado that was in the vicinity. So we don't know what Mother Nature has in store.
Janice Haney wrote a book about the tornado. She built her new green home on a family farm 10 miles outside of town.
The east and west sides of the house are called earth berms. Dirt is pulled up high enough that it's used for insulation. It makes this house very quiet, and it makes it so we don't have to use any more of our electricity than we need to.
Bill Odell is among the estimated 700 residents who returned to Greensburg within the first year of rebuilding. His kids had to adjust to a new home and a town in transition. But Bill is proud so many people came back.
It's just really neat how they're wanting this small town in Kansas to survive.
Prior to the tornado, Greensburg had little hope of attracting new business to its community. Leaders say the Green Initiative has changed that.
What I would tell council is that you have a true opportunity to bring hundreds of jobs to this community.
The city believes new eco-based business will come to Greensburg, and with it, jobs, to keep young people from leaving for other towns.
You're going to have a community that has a brand new school, brand new hospital, brand new infrastructure, brand new streets, brand new homes, and now brand new businesses and factories and industry. Why would this not be a great place to live?
The EF5 tornado took just minutes to change Greensburg forever. But the small town hopes that it will spark changes that will last for generations.
We believe they can transform the way we think about community building, and they can set a model for revitalizing rural America.
That's the story that Greensburg has to tell. You can recover, you can revitalize, you can show the world and be an example by doing things smart. It's about our future generations.